essentially, every year we run a fellows program with the goals of training and inspiring the next generation of leaders in data science and computing. Part of the motivation is to actually foster collaboration across the different university departments and research groups. And what we would like to do is to take sort of new algorithms that were developed for one particular area and apply them to new science projects. Or we would like to sort of develop new algorithm to defeat computational bottlenecks in a particular area. And the applications are really wide varied. We've supported people in humanities, communication, architecture, engineering, earth sciences, etc. So what I would like to do after introducing this is actually introduce you to 3 fellows that I have picked kind of strategically. Someone who participated in the program a few years ago and has sort of a longer perspective on the fellowship program, somebody who just finished their fellowship, and somebody who's currently doing their fellowship, and give them their perspective and how it affected their career path. So going back to the program itself, so we help students not only with their resources needs in terms of CPUs and software applications to which they actually have access, but we also help them with the mentors. So every fellow is supposed to have 2 mentors, one mentor from the discipline where they're coming from, and a computational scientist, most often not from the IDSC groups. And the people you are looking at here are some of the people who help with the program, either by participating in the steering committee or by being mentors to the fellow students. The process of application is actually, fairly simple. Sometimes in October, we sent out an email to everybody on campus asking them to apply. What we ask is a statement of interest, a support letter from an academic advisor, a transcript, and a CV. Okay? And then the steering committee meets, discusses, and pick the people who are in most need of computing, who have interesting problems, and who are data ready and computing ready to actually do their projects. So to tell us about the experience, actually, we have the 3 fellows that you see here, and I will let them introduce themselves and talk about their experience, how it affected their career, what they wish they would have done, how to evolve it in the future. So please take it out. We'll start with the oldest alum, I guess, Michael Durante.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, to the organizers. So I'm Michael Durante. I was a past fellow, I believe it was 2016, when it was the Center for Computational Science. And so I did my MD PhD at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. My mentor at that time was Dr. Bill Harbour, and I also worked with Dr. Stefan Schur as part of the fellowship. And so I actually started interacting with Pegasus and the IDSC systems back in 2014, right when I entered my PhD. So as part of an MD PhD, you do your first 2 years of medicine, and then you go on to the PhD training. And so I had gotten some initial experience from my undergrad, and so I really wanted to invest my time in developing computational skills. Back then, it was like a lot of the research that was being conducted, you could see the value, the papers, the big data. And so at that time, I learned about the fellowship. I used it for my project. I was able to publish over 20 papers throughout my PhD. I did a 6-year PhD. It was a little bit longer than most, but the work that I was doing using the computational analysis on Pegasus and then Triton when it came on board was instrumental to everything that I did. And so then I went back to my clinical training. I moved on. Dr. Harbour actually went to a different university. And so most recently, what I've done is I've joined the myeloma division. And when I joined the group, they had come down from Memorial Sloan Kettering as Dr. Ola Langren. And they had developed and purchased their own computer systems. And when I joined the group, I said, look, we have these amazing resources here on campus. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so I introduced them to the IDSC systems. I remembered everything that I had done throughout my PhD, my interactions, even Dr. Schur, we collaborate on some things. And now we have almost a petabyte of storage. We run all of our analysis. So what I included here is some of the things that we do. So as part of the myeloma group, we have a number of clinical trials. And so for those of you that don't know what myeloma is, it's a blood-based disorder. It impacts around 40,000 patients in the US per year, and then many patients live with this disease. It's a chronic disease. We don't yet have a cure, and that's what we're working hard to find. And to understand what's going on for these patients, we collect a lot of genomic data. So we go to the blood and the bone marrow where we collect these cells, and we can do whole genome sequencing. So we do deep sequencing of the DNA. We also look at the RNA, and we do single cells. So we can actually identify individual cells, tumor or immune, and we can do comprehensive profiling of these individual cells to look at the tumor heterogeneity. And so using these pipelines, so the first pipeline here, the MGP 1000, it's a myeloma genome pipeline that we developed in collaboration with NYU, and I did this throughout my residency, so working nights and weekends. And now we can comprehensively profile the genomes. We run all these little boxes. Those are all different algorithms, like the colored boxes. Those are all different algorithms that we run, and we get these comprehensive profiles, and we understand which the patients that are progressing on our treatments, the causative reasons why they're progressing, and then we also identify new targets that we can potentially use for drugs that are either in development or drugs that are already in existence. And so the additional things that I wanted to show is, so one of our recent analysis that we did, we looked at patients treated with CAR T. So CAR T is this novel therapy where we get immune cells from our patients and we engineer them to attack the tumors. It's really the closest thing that we have to a cure in lymphoma. So these patients get one dose of these cells and they're without treatment for multiple years. In myeloma, we have not been as successful. Some patients do get these long responses, but some some progress much more quickly. So we're trying to understand, why do some patients respond and others don't? And so using genomics, using single cell, we utilize these. And so as you can see all the way to your right, that's a Kaplan-Meier. And so that's kind of looking at patients that are responding. So the top curve are patients that have had really good response to the therapy. And then the patients that are not responding are the ones that are dropping off on the curve. And so we've been able to identify the patient populations at baseline that are going to respond or don't respond to therapy. And so this is being done. We analyze hundreds of samples, like I mentioned, like upwards of a petabyte of data, and we're rapidly generating more data. We have many, many clinical trials looking at different questions. This is just an example. And then at the very top, that's the single cell data that I was mentioning. So each of those dots represents one cell in one of the patients, and we get tens of thousands of cells from each of our patients. And so then we can identify not only what's going on within the tumor, but within the immune microenvironment. And what we find is that the patients that don't respond to therapy as well, they have differences within their immune microenvironment. And so these are all important things that we're identifying. And then some of the things that I don't have listed here, but we're now leveraging the GPU architecture that's offered by our IDSC. We have a number of AI projects. We published this at the end of 2023 in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, but we're developing predictive models. So not only using, after the fact, we know these patients haven't responded, this is kind of why we think it happened, but now using data from thousands of patients. And so now patients can come in and we can decide, these are patients that maybe need less therapy. They do well with less therapy. And then there's other patients that do extremely well when we give them more therapy. So, we're really at the cutting edge here. We're just starting to break into this, but as we develop more data, as we collect this data on all of our patients, and we're doing it as well as many other centers that we're collaborating with, but it's an exciting time, and my time at IDSC has been amazing, and it's really changed the whole trajectory of my career. I'm a clinician. I spend a lot of my time in the hospital, but I'm able, with my laptop, at the end of the day, on the weekends that I do have off, I'm able to analyze data, and we can make these impactful discoveries that are changing the way we treat our patients. So I'm immensely thankful to IDSC and everyone for the opportunities that they gave me. And even today, I was speaking with Dr. Schur and others. We have ongoing collaborations. These are lifelong relationships that you will make, and will really impact your future.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Madeline Dawson.
Awesome, perfect. So hello everyone, my name is Madeline Dawson. I am currently a PhD student at the Rosenstiel School. I'm a PhD student in ocean sciences, but I just wanted to mention my undergrad was in bioengineering, so I kind of made the jump from bioengineering to ocean sciences. When I was an undergrad, I worked with LiDAR, and I took my first machine learning class in my life in 2020, and then I graduated, and we know the world kind of changed a bit. So then I actually made the transition into my PhD. Becoming an IDSC Fellow has been really beneficial. I've been working with Dr. Chapman, and my project is focused on utilizing synthetic aperture radar, which I think we can see right up here on the right. So synthetic aperture radar is a spaceborne remote sensing sensor. It's an active sensor that collects backscatter measurements. So there's a lot of nuances to the data. So that's kind of something that when I first was getting into my research, it was the first barrier that I saw was if I want to apply higher machine learning models or data processing, I needed to really understand the data. So I took the first year to get into that, and then I saw the opportunity to become an IDSC Fellow. So I applied for that because I knew that I wanted to apply more higher complex machine learning models for my island wake segmentations, but I really needed that guidance, and that's what IDSC has really provided. Talking a little bit more about my research. So why I want to look at island wakes particularly. So in climate models and weather forecasting, there's a lot of parameters that we still need to look into and advance, island wakes being one of them. Island wakes are, as you can see in the image, all across the world, but generally as we're looking at them, they are the interaction of the wind field. If you're specifically looking at wind-induced island wakes, it's the interaction of the wind field and the island topography. And you can see it actually puts a low backscatter return on the SAR image. And so that dark feature, as you see right up there, is what we're trying to look and parameterize, specifically looking at spreading rates and velocity decay rates and how we can understand the wind field around that. So what I've been working with particularly with IDSC and Dr. Chapman was I started working on myself with a general segmentation model and realized that there was a lot more that could be done to the data itself to enhance the segmentation results and to be able to extract parameters more accurately, specifically looking at the boundary, because as you can tell within island wakes, there's a lot of turbulence and features that we as ocean scientists really want to understand. You can see this image on the right side here is I was just on a research cruise this January collecting some in situ data as well as additional synthetic aperture radar data, which was focused here. This was in Guam, Tinian, and Saipan. So what we want to do is we really want to utilize all the data sources that are there. But with synthetic aperture radar, the data is quite large. So each image when I download, it's about 1.5 gigabytes, just one image. So there's a lot of data that you're looking at. And as well as being a part of the program, it's been really helpful to have that mentorship. So luckily, my IDSC advisor is now my committee member. So that's been really helpful. So I'm happy to answer questions after, but thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Kate Martinez. I'm one of the current IDSC Fellows. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Department of Atmospheric Sciences at Rosenstiel School. I'm advised by Ben Kurtman, and my IDSC mentor is Sam Goldberg. I didn't include as many images on my slide, but this is some preliminary results, and actually I have a poster behind the camera, and I'm happy to talk about what I've been working on. But my whole PhD research is really how much of ENSO, how much of the El Nino Southern Oscillation is driven by subsurface preconditioning or these deterministic dynamics versus atmospheric noise or these stochastic processes. And so the reason I went to go for the IDSC Fellowship is because I didn't know anything about machine learning until 3 months ago. And I really was interested in having these this mentorship and this like network of folks that can sort of help advise, in addition to Ben, on what to do. So, you know, I'm mostly interested in atmospheric noise and how it limits the predictability of ENSO. And so my project is sort of looking at, essentially what I've done is I've built a CNN LSTM, and I'm looking at how much of atmospheric noise or these zonal and meridional wind stresses can predict the Nino 3-4 SSTA. And I'm pretty excited because it seems to do a pretty good job. Generally, subsurface preconditioning has been considered the main source of ENSO predictability, but I have some really exciting results, and I'm happy to share more. It's been a really awesome experience so far working with IDSC.
Thank you all. Are there any questions from the audience? I have a question. If you have to look back at your experience, I guess this is for somebody who's gone through it, what would you do differently, if anything?
Thank you.
And if you can comment on the role of mentors and advisors dynamic.
Yeah, so I think, so I'll say, first of all, I had an amazing experience. It was extremely fruitful. You know, it's very difficult to say what I do differently, but what I will say is that, like, I guess one of the things that I did well was select mentors. You know, in my day and age, like when I was like 10 years ago, like finding someone that was willing to let you invest your time into computational work, you had to like look really hard to find that sort of mentor. And it, you know, seeing the work that's being done today, like in everything that's happening, there's, you know, an immense amount of support of people that are, you know, will let you invest your time. I think that, you know, I was straddling both wet lab science and computational science. And so I think I was like scared to take the leap to just go full computational. And so, you know, maybe something I could have done differently is like advocated for myself and say, hey, look, this was, you know, this is what I want to do. I want to spend all my time doing this. Part of the reason why I spent an extra 2 years of my PhD because I had this time. And so just advocate for yourself. If there's something you want to do, you know, don't be scared. And you have a lot of supportive mentors here and a lot of people that can vouch for you. The data speaks for itself. And, you know, for someone like me who's in a clinical world, it's very difficult to take time away from the clinic. And so computational work allows me to still pursue research like after hours and sometimes in the middle of the day if I have time. And so don't be scared to, you know, take that leap of faith. If you're uncomfortable with something, just, you know, lean into it. And, you know, those are the types of points in your life that you can actually grow. And you know, now where I'm at, I'm very comfortable with everything I did, and it's because I spent all that time in my PhD. But I see others that come to me and they say, you know, they want to do this type of work, you know, they don't know where to start. And, you know, one, find a good mentor, but two, just, you know, do it. It's repetition. So, yeah, I think that's, I hope that answers it.
That's great. So, oh, okay. Yeah, so I think in terms of what I would do different, it's not so much do different, but I just think that initially don't get scared at the start. We were just talking actually right before this, since she's about to start and get deep into the project, is at the beginning is a steep learning curve, especially maybe your background is not computer science or data science. I'm ocean science, so of course we don't focus on specifically models or, the deep math side of it, but don't be scared because the reward will pay off in investing. Especially, I see the tools in my field alone just growing exponentially. Lately, there's been so many papers that have been published on, satellite machine learning and focusing on utilizing this in the ocean world. So I think just not being scared at the beginning and just knowing that the advisors are there for you to help you. And it's been a great experience. I think my thing was I really wanted someone to talk to. I was reading lots of papers and just realizing that this program offers you that one-to-one that sometimes you need as a student, specifically PhD student, sometimes when you're like, really in your niche topic. So yeah, thank you.
I'm still in it, so I can't really do anything different. I can't really comment.
All right. Any questions from the audience? We have one question.
Was here in the morning, early afternoon, and he spoke about collaboration, right? So early on, I asked Gabriel from the prior segment the same question. So my question to the three panelists now, in the research that you do you see opportunities to work together with companies that are developing maybe similar types of initiatives? And what I mean by that, in the medical sector, maybe medical devices, in terms of, it's a technical term, the imagery, maybe, I saw the NASA logo. Clearly NASA partners with a lot of private sector players, and I couldn't think of an example in the atmospheric sciences, but there's gotta be some type of collaboration opportunity there as well, right?
Yeah, so I can certainly speak to that. During my PhD, actually, my mentor, we worked to develop a standard of care prognostic test. So I was working in uveal melanoma, which is a very rare eye cancer, and he had developed a gene expression test that would determine which patients were high risk or low risk. But there was some areas where we could improve on that test. And so the genomic stuff that I was doing with him, we actually went on to develop in addition to that test. So it was a DNA-based test. We developed it in collaboration with the company, which is now part of their standard of care prognostic test. And so it was very interesting because I got to see, not only how, you do the science and you develop it, but then how the company then takes the data and then all of the approval process that they have to go, because there's this approval process through New York State and all these things. And so following that along, and even now, we developed the largest ever prognostic clinical trial in uveal melanoma. It was over 1,500 patients, recently published in Journal of Clinical Oncology last year. And then we now have the follow-up paper where we looked at all the genomics. And they're using this data for their approval, which is now already approved for insurance reimbursement. So I think that's a great point. The skills that you develop, you're very marketable, even at different parts of your career. You may decide, for me, it's a very set trajectory. You go to medical school, PhD, residency, fellowship, academic job, but, there's exit points all along that. And I have some of my colleagues who did similar programs, and, because of their computational skills, they went on to industry and they worked to, develop, other projects. And so, I'll say the skills that you develop, you become extremely marketable, whether it's in an academic setting, a business setting, and a lot of times there's opportunities to, in the academic setting, even to develop, projects with business. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Awesome. So yeah, I think in terms of my field, it's definitely a lot different than yours. Not as straightforward. So yeah, in my scope of my work, we focus primarily on satellite data. So I think I come from an engineering background, and so I've talked to business majors, and so I can see that sometimes we can benefit from that business model mindset, if that makes sense. I think at the end of my research, I think the best thing that I can see is for the future of researchers specifically trying to utilize my data is just having like that user access. So I feel like I see the future, especially in my field. There's a lot of commercial businesses such as like ISI, Capella Space that are working primarily with my data, and they actually have this business model where they kind of are the provider of that data for businesses across insurance, maybe engineers, civil engineers. So I see that as a future. It's just kind of that integration point. I'm not quite sure. Maybe in like 5-10 years I could answer that better, but yeah.
It's a really interesting question because I haven't totally thought about that. But, you know, ENSO modulates the global climate and it has all these teleconnections. And if we know there's going to be, if there tends to be maybe a drought somewhere that, you know, affects agriculture, and we would want to know that. Like, as far ahead of time as we could, farmers want to know that. And I'm sure there's hundreds of examples that, but it's just it's a really interesting question. And I also cannot really. Sure, oh, insurance, oh my gosh, yeah. No, exactly, yeah.
So I would like to thank all our panelists for the time, for sharing their experience with us. Feel free to ask them questions while they're here. I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to everyone. Thanks.